ask the customer what problem they're trying to solve with their product and give them a more rounded approach. That's your opportunity to create a relationship that they'll remember. And it just transforms from to a cost center to a revenue generating center, and they'll pay for themselves.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. The game has completely changed when it comes to serving customers in the new world of e-commerce. The personal touch that existed in the traditional world may not exist in the e-commerce world. The customers also operate in self-serve mode, so they need a lot of information to research and make decisions. You might think that the role of salespeople may not be relevant in the new world of e-commerce, but their role is even more relevant as they need to become coaches and provide the same hand-holding as they would get in the traditional world. In today's episode, we invited a panel of cross-functional experts for a live interview on LinkedIn who brings significant expertise implementing e-commerce websites to discuss customer service strategies. We also discussed the challenges with e-commerce customer service and how it differs from traditional customer service. Finally, we discussed the effective ways of measuring customer service and the newer trends and technologies available to improve customer service. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, welcome everyone. Today's topic is the customer service strategies. For an e-commerce business, the customer service strategies are going to be super critical because in the traditional mode, you have the personal touch. You can answer a lot of questions for the customer. You can manage the expectations. That does not exist in the e-commerce world. The game changes completely. So you need to follow specific things in the e-commerce world that are going to be relevant, and that's exactly what we are going to be talking today. Just to get things off, we are going to be starting with the intro of the panel. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
Sure. I'm Eric Landman, the e-commerce division manager of Earthling Interactive. I'm a Magenta certified solution specialist and a project manager and developer, and I've been involved in building out about 50 or so e-commerce sites on quite a variety of platforms.
Okay, amazing. And I am super excited to have you, Eric, here because you have done 50 different, websites, and all of those are going to have significant customer service needs. So thank you so much for being here. Steve, would you like to go next, if you don't mind?
Sure. My name is Steve Rice from .com Jungle, and we help companies make and implement wise technology choices, which sometimes almost always includes something related to customer experience. Built hundreds of websites and integrated hundreds of companies and knocked down a bunch of silos over the last 20 years.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve, for being here. Obviously, your background is significantly relevant in the CPG space, and the customer service need in the CPG space is going to be slightly more robust. So we are going to be talking about all of that. I'm super excited. Chris, would you like to go next for your intro, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Chris Harrington, president of Gen Alpha Technologies. We are 10 years in business helping equipment manufacturers sell their parts, new and used equipment online. So always a pleasure to be here every Wednesday. I have many years of manufacturing experience in my background as well. So a lot of my stories are mixed between lived manufacturing experience and then the lived e-commerce experience as well.
Yeah. And when we think about e-commerce and B2B, I don't know how many people are going to be relating with the customer service, but the customer service is going to be super relevant in the B2B e-commerce as well. So I'm super excited to talk about that. Damon, and you are the guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
All right. Thanks, Sam. Damon Pistolka, Exit Your Way. We're helping business owners create valuable business they can sell or succeed when they want. Usually we're working with manufacturing and e-commerce clients. They're usually multi-platform companies. They're going to be on, we've had them as high as 20 or 30 different platforms they're selling products on with, anywhere from 1,000 SKUs to 100,000 SKUs. So customer service in those kind of organizations, it can truly be a revenue generating source. And I'm happy to be here to contribute what I can.
Okay, amazing. And Damon, obviously you have seen the entire life cycle of these companies and how customer service evolves over the period of time. So your experience is going to be super relevant for the panel. Thank you so much for being here. Aaron, would you like to go next? I know that you are probably going to be the proxy for the customer for your own business. And then you are working on a lot of requirements for the customer service for your customers. So obviously you are going to have tons and tons of background. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sam. Yes, of course. And you're right. I don't have the technological knowledge that Eric and Christina and Steve bring every week, but I do know about customer service. So I'm excited for our talk today.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron, for the intro. So one of the things we are going to do is we are going to talk about the differences between the customer service needs for the traditional business versus the e-commerce business, because a lot of companies who are going through the e-commerce journey, they might know that, I need to create the website. I probably need to do a little bit of SEO, but they don't necessarily think from the customer service perspective, what I can do to make sure I have my customer service. I like to use the word architecture, which is going to sound slightly more technical, but in my mind, everything is architecture because that's sort of the framework that you are using. So when you look at these requirements or needs for the customer, the way they expect you to deliver, the way their expectations are. So we are going to have certain needs, and each industry is going to have different needs. So Damon, I'm actually going to start with you because you have seen these businesses very closely. So let's say if you look at a traditional business versus what an e-commerce business do. So give me some bullet points in terms of how they are different overall in the customer service processes.
Well, the e-commerce business, your customer doesn't necessarily know you. In a traditional B2B manufacturing business, your customer service people probably have interacted with that customer many times. In the e-commerce world, it's not necessarily the case, and you often have to be more informational and provide a lot more suggestions to your customer in the customer service of an e-commerce business than you would in a B2B, because they probably know what they want already in a lot of situations there. And it's truly an opportunity, I believe, for the customer service to be not a cost center in a business, but a revenue generating center in an e-commerce business. Because when you talk about things like, if your customer service people know your products well enough that they can suggest additional products, that they can solve that customer, just ask the customer what problem they're trying to solve with their product and give them a more rounded approach, that's your opportunity to create a relationship that they'll remember. And it really just transforms to a cost center to a revenue generating center, and they'll pay for themselves.
So you actually hit on some very important points. Number one, the unknown factor is going to be significantly relevant, because when you are in the traditional business, these guys, the salespeople or the customer service people that you have had, they might know the customer by their first name. But then when you are coming to the website, obviously there are certain strategies, but the experience is not going to be the same. So you need to make the experience easy. And we are going to be discussing the technicals of that, how you can make that experience easy so that they can feel welcome to your business the way you would welcome them when you are doing it traditionally. Now, the other point that you really mentioned, that's key there. So you are changing from the cost center to the revenue generating profit center. And you mentioned one of the scenario related to your cross sell and upsell. So the more consultative they are, it's not really just solving the problems. It's also going to be going beyond your products and service and really understanding what the challenges the customer is facing and what you could do to really help them out. Have you seen anything else when it comes to the cost center versus revenue generation strategy? Have you seen any other scenarios in which they are going to be slightly more generating the revenue from the customer service perspective, Damon? And that's a clarifying question for you, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. I mean, you can by doing a few things, you're going to talk about the technical aspects, and I know
Yeah.
Chris and Eric and Steve, they've got a wealth of knowledge there. But if you provide those customer service people with the training, both in sales and customer service and the consultative approach, I mean, I can't stress training enough.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can literally turn a sales into a multi-million-dollar customer service it can go from costing you money to generating multi-million dollars in revenue in a period of 6 or months to a year, just by teaching them how to help solve problems. Because customer service, as traditional going back years, they're dealing with problems, right? And it burns people out, because all you're listening to is that problem, and you're still getting them. Don't get me wrong when you're doing the customer service, but if you're actually allowing your customer service people, giving them the tools to solve the problems, and maybe even upsell if it's someone new just asking about a product, they become a much more engaged and integral part of your overall business strategy to develop that brand recognition and that brand love that you really want to do.
Yeah, and it's very interesting the way you talk about this thing, because I have heard one of these stories where somebody made a comment that once you actually go to your e-commerce journey, then your salespeople are not going to be needed, or they are not going to be as relevant. But the way you are describing right now, I think they are far more relevant, because they are actually going to become your coach. And even in the sales world, I think you would want them to become more of the thought leader, the coach. And the more you provide the personalized experience through e-commerce, the more e-commerce is going to be successful for you. So thank you so much, Damon, for that. I am going to move next to Chris, if you don't mind. What are the differences that you have seen in your area that is going to be the difference between your traditional customer service to the modern customer service or e-commerce centric customer service?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest difference, and Damon touched on it, is in an e-commerce situation, you're giving the customer the ability to self-service in so many different ways. And what that does is it changes how your customer service and your salespeople approach a customer. If you look at e-commerce as a tool that your customers are using, but also a tool for your customer service team and your salespeople, it now gives them leverage to answer and solve things faster, assuming you've done a good job with your information, your data, you're continuing to manage that stuff. All of this becomes a tool that helps customer service. So agree with Damon that absolutely you want to turn your salespeople and your customer service people into people who can be proactive about finding and uncovering the next area and opportunity for your business together, rather than solving traditional problems that really your ERP can take care of. You just had to have a mediator in between to say, what's the price and availability for that? Or when is my product going to ship? Or what is the tracking information? All of that can be answered in an e-commerce self-service model. You don't need people for that once you have e-commerce. So now you transform your people into being proactive. Additionally, if you transform them into analysts who can study the data behind this magnificent tool that's collecting all of this great information, now you can act on that data. So you freed up resources who were doing very transactional, but maybe not value-added activities, and now they're adding value. So I would focus on that. And one other thing I would just add is I think there's some generational differences. I hate to go, some people don't like to talk millennial versus Gen X, but there is a generational difference. So that relationship, that long established relationship that you've had with your B2B accounts, as the generation shifts, that relationship is shifting as well. And they're going to be relying on these tools more than ever, because the tool is their relationship with you. Their new brand experience is their relationship with you. So that generational shift is very different too. There's lots of stories about people who love to call Bob because Bob has all the answers, and for years Bob has been there for them. But that next generational person doesn't have a relationship with Bob, They don't know Bob. They don't pick up the phone to call Bob, and they may never, ever get a chance to talk to Bob to get to know your company that way. So you've got to meet them on that other side where they are going to go. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, this was very helpful. In fact, I love the story about Bob, and there is something to it when you talk about the generational shift. As much as I personally want Bob to be successful, you don't want your company to be relying on Bob, because if Bob moves out, then obviously you don't have that touch. You are actually going to lose that customer. And obviously, Bob is going to have a lot of clout overall in the negotiation game. So you don't have as much clout as a company. Again, we are looking at the organizational perspective as opposed to individual perspective. It doesn't matter who we are talking about. But overall, if you want to create really scalable infrastructure for the company, it has to decouple all of these forces that are going to be driving the company in one direction. I also love the way you described about the speed of the customer experience. So I'm actually going to build on top of that and give a scenario. So you gave an example of, let's say, if your customer is coming to ask for the price, here is going to be the traditional approach. Okay, Bob is going to say, you know what, I'll just check with my team. I'll come back as soon as possible. And that as soon as possible is really good, because what is going to happen in the background is Bob is going to run into 5 different departments. So Bob goes to inventory department, checks out whether the product is available or not, then goes to accounting, then goes to marketing. Oh my goodness, there is a little bit of back and forth, chaos, confusion. I don't know what all. Finally, Bob gets the price. It is going to be equally frustrating experience for Bob, because nobody likes to do this, to be honest. Okay. And finally, Bob gives the price to the customer. Customer is super frustrated that I asked a simple question. Give me the price. And you don't have answer for that. So this is how the experience is going to go. Now, let's talk about the e-commerce story. In case of e-commerce, what is going to happen is, as you correctly pointed out, Chris, that these guys are going to be the analysts. I think that's the term that we should all be using. So what they are going to do is they are going to be analyzing the pricing. Okay, what is the price that I had provided in the last transaction? Because one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to overquote or underquote. Because even if you are being completely fair in your business, if you do that, your customers are not going to be happy. They like consistency. They like to be treated with respect when you are selling them something. So the more analysis that you do, and that has to happen in the real time. So I really love the aspect that you mentioned about the speed of the analysis and speed of the answers. I think that's the critical factor in terms of the customer experience. So now I am actually going to move to Eric. Eric, would you like to touch this from the comparison of the traditional and the modern customer service, or the e-commerce customer service?
The idea we try to project is to extend that user experience to the web, which is not a simple thing, or it's fairly complex. But one of the ways we go about it is providing them with more information. That could be and ways to find things, hopefully, that are sensible in their user terms. So you would sort products by hinges. You'd have left navigation that makes sense in terms of finish and the number of screws and the dimensions. So that's just one thing, though. That's really garden variety e-commerce stuff. You might also have a parts manual or a repair manual for other types of products. But then, to extend the concept farther, there's a huge increase in the number of assistants, customer assistants, like live in-person help sort of features, like chat systems. And people have kind of got burned by some of those, because there's chat robots that people put on their sites. Like, you go to the phone company and, what can I help you? And it's like, after a while you go, that's nobody there. That's a robot. We don't want to do that. That's a bad feature. What we do want to do, though, is to assist the customers. So an actual live person chat where they can tell it's somebody that can help them, that's fantastic. But you have to be clear about hours when it's staffed, if somebody's around or not around. Otherwise, the person's going to go, well, there's nobody answering. I guess they don't care. Again, wrong impression. So that's one avenue. Another very interesting avenue is in terms of product configurators, or ways to select product features or options and produce maybe a quote in a B2B scenario, or help get a live person to assist after somebody has gone through and answered a number of questions. We have a site that sells sailboards, and they're installing a configurator for people who don't know anything about sailboards. Like, how would you buy a sailboard? I don't know anything about sailboards. So there's a number of questions they step through, and at the end of it, they get a list of recommendations, and they can have a person help them or talk to them throughout the whole process. So that's a real in-person type of solution. And, you can't do that for an 89-cent hinge, or maybe you could, but it's a lot easier to do when you're selling $1,000 sailboard, because you've got the money there. You've got enough margin to staff a salesperson. So those are some of the options that we're seeing out there.
Yeah, so some amazing points there.
Okay.
And you actually touch on some of the points which are super critical, especially when you talk about the 89-cent hinge. Obviously, you cannot provide the customer experience that you are going to expect when you are buying, let's say, $1 million machine. But at the same time, with e-commerce, what happens is once your customers get trained or coached on your platform, let's say if they are a repeat customer or they have used it for a couple of times, the overall coaching time and training time is not going to be as much. So overall, your workload is going to be reduced. So the people who are going to be struggling with the 89 cents problem, it's not that you cannot serve them. Sometimes you can serve them, because the people who are going to be struggling with this, maybe it's just 1%, 2%, or whatever. So the more you do it, initially you might have a lot of barrier overall, because a lot of people are going to be showing up for help. So that's where your salespeople could come really handy in becoming the customer experience coach. And I am actually going to tell you one story, to be honest, okay, related to the live part that you just mentioned. So I was actually trying to navigate a site. I didn't like it very much, but they were the only ones who were providing that product. So I went there and I was trying to explore. I just could not find what I was looking for. I got super frustrated, and I simply dropped a phone number on the chat bot. Okay, because I was trying to chat with the bot, and bot could not really understand what I was trying to say. So I simply dropped my number, and I knew that the kind of site this is, nobody's gonna call me, nobody's gonna bother. I simply dropped the number. To my surprise, within a minute, someone calls me, and the person says, "You know what? I'm really sorry that you had to go through. I have the entire history of what you have done. This is the product that you were looking for. And honestly speaking, the problem was me, because I was not educated enough on their side. The site was completely fine. There's no problem at all." So he said that, this is the better option. If you're trying to find this on our site, it's designed slightly differently. Maybe it's not easy to look at. We are working on that. But this is what you were looking for. This is how you can find it. Next time if you come, you don't have to call us. You can find it yourself. Now, that call helped me so much that I am always doing business with them, because now I can trust that somebody is there to take care of me. Today, let's say if I drop my credit card, okay, nobody's going to steal that because looking at the site, I just didn't trust them as the real business, to be honest. But when I got the call, I am getting the sense. So there is going to be a little bit of marriage of the e-commerce and the traditional aspect. Your customer experience coaches are going to be equally relevant. So you are absolutely right that you don't want to expose those live bots, because nobody likes live bots. But in some cases, you can do that depending upon how much volume you have. So thank you so much for those insights, Eric. Steve, I'm actually going to move to you. What have you seen comparing the traditional versus the e-commerce customer experience? Do you agree with everything that has been said so far? Do you disagree with anything?
I don't disagree with anything anyone was said, and that anything that anyone has said so far. I'm going to back up and sort of try and take like the 100,000 foot view and point out what I think is true, which is that the ideal web experience, whether it's B2B or B2C, is going to mimic the human experience as much as possible. And I'm going to say my opinion is that we're nowhere close to that. And that's what we're striving for. So as much as we like the digital realm for certain things it can do, it does do some things better than humans. There's a lot of things it just doesn't. For instance, if you are going to have a live chat bot, that live chat bot is best populated with questions and answers based on a human being's experience with live chat over a span of like 2 years. Better yet, let's say an entire team. And then that live chat bot is actually intelligent and is providing the correct kind of answers. But what I would say as an example, we've given some like real world examples. No one has ever walked into, say, Oregon Mountain Community in Portland, picked up a Nalgene water bottle and said, "How many stars do you give this?" Right? And no one has walked into a hardware store ever in the world and said to John, "Show me where this hinge is, or can you find me the hinge?" And then turned around and said, "I would need to speak to 5 other employees and 15 customers to see how many stars they give this hinge." So the other thing that I would say to connect this together is I feel like right now the world is stuck in a box that we need to get out of. And that box is mostly driven by Amazon data and expectations created by what Amazon does on their website, because everybody looks at that and says that must be good. They've got. But in reality, once again, we're learning that many of the star ratings aren't true. Many of the reviews aren't correct. Even if 10%, and I think the number is far higher than that, aren't correct, that's still a significant number. So if you're running a B2B or a B2C business, your goal, once again, is to recreate the human experience as much as possible. And those customer service humans that are on the back end supporting that, they are an investment, not an expense. They're going to create revenue for you, even if that part of that creation of revenue is to streamline systematic processes to get information to your customers through tools like live chat and bot chat and stuff like that. So.
What you were saying, Steve, reminds me of a client that came to us, and it was at the beginning of the pandemic, and she had a small retail shop, and she said, "Yes, I'm doing Shopify, but that's not why I got into this business. It was just to sell things. I really like to talk to people. I really like providing amazing customer service." And so the same is true on the other side in the site owner experience too. They want to engage in that relationship, and it's not the same to do it digitally. But what I shared with her and what I hope people take away from this is if you make that a priority, if you make a good experience, yes, it's a digital experience, but if you make that a priority, the quality of the experience, then you're still exhibiting that value, that you care about people's experience and you care about their experience with your product. So I just wanted to chime in that it's on both sides, you know?
Yeah, I agree, Aaron. I think you make a good point. And part of that is that in small business, medium-sized businesses, the bar has actually been set pretty low from a technology standpoint. Amazon's great, but really that bar isn't that high. And it's not that hard if you're REI or backcountry.com to create a user experience for your customers that's far better. In fact, Backcountry is famous for, they have customer service representatives. Sweetwater does this in the musical world. And it's a human-driven, human-centered design system, essentially. And the software has to support the human beings and not the other way around.
Okay, so some very interesting points there, and I completely agree with you, Steve, that we are nowhere close to mimicking that human experience on the digital. I think one of these days we are going to be there once the personalization technologies are going to be slightly more sophisticated. We are not there yet. But I definitely have some more clarifying questions for you, and that is going to be about your comment related to Amazon. So I know that Amazon is always viewed as, okay, I want to be like Amazon in terms of customer service, and they are really good, of course, right? I know where you are coming from overall, why you should not only be thinking about Amazon, because when you think about Amazon, you are simply thinking, okay, that is the only way of doing things. Your example about the backcountry, that there are other ways of enabling customer experience that is going to be probably superior than Amazon, or probably better, just because you can provide slightly more tailored and personalized experience. But in your experience, why are you calling out Amazon? And what are some of the things that owners can look at that, okay, no, Amazon is not the only thing that you should be looking at. You should be paying attention to some other things as well.
Well, I don't mean to actually call out them as
okay.
in a negative sense. I mean to bring them up because everybody knows. Everybody that's watching this, listening to this, knows exactly what an Amazon product page looks like. Everybody. And so it's easy for that to be the benchmark. I would make the case, though, Amazon isn't good at customer service. They're good at customer process. Backcountry.com is good at customer service. Bed Bath & Beyond, not so much. Great people working there, but they're not trained to provide the same kind of customer service that you're going to get if you go to the little shop in your town where someone's been working there for 15 years and knows exactly what spatula you need for your nonstick pan. So I wouldn't say that they're great at customer service, but the process, it's insanely good because it's all data driven. So there are definitely pieces of technology and systems and processes that we all, basically they're sort of standard practice in a lot of content management systems that run websites. But the opportunity for small businesses is to take those systems, utilize them as much as possible, but really bring that customer-centric focus to it. Can I give you an example?
Please, and maybe if you can clarify what is the difference between customer service and the process, I think that's actually going to help the listeners, because I don't know if everybody is going to be familiar with the difference between customer process and customer service.
Well, customer service is a good example for Amazon because Amazon actually doesn't do customer service. When you return something, you're returning it back to other people most of the time. Even if you're sending it back to Amazon, if it's past a certain amount of time, you have to go back to the people who actually sold it to you, not Amazon themselves. So there are customer service elements in that. The process is a good example because you can click on your product. Maybe it arrived today. I click on the product. I can hit return. It says why. It gives me 8 options. In my experience, maybe 10% of the time, one of those options actually fits. So it's a good process, but service level, very low. I click one. It says, good, here's your label. Go to UPS. I'm done. So that was a great process and a decent customer service experience. Now, if I go buy, say, a Hydro Flask bottle using Amazon again, I have to kind of know what I'm looking for. I have to have an understanding of the industry that actually makes water bottles for whatever pursuit. Let's say I'm a Raptor. And I have to actually know probably that a stainless steel insulated water bottle is different than a polycarbonate Nalgene bottle, which was standard of the day in 1995. Now, if I go to Amazon, I might end up with all sorts of things. It's almost unlimited. If I walk into Oregon Mountain Community, I'm not going to walk up to somebody and say, how many stars do you give this thing? Because I don't know what thing I'm looking for. I'm going to say to somebody, look, I went on the river last week and I made iced tea and I put it in a container. And by the time I got to lunch, my ice was melted and the iced tea was 102 degrees. The customer service portion of that is that person saying, hey, I went on the river yesterday and I took a Hydro Flask stainless steel bottle and I had my iced tea and it was still ice cold and all the ice was in it at noon. You can't get that on Amazon. So one of the things I would say that back to the opportunity for small businesses, if you can actually get your employees and your customers not to write reviews, I think reviews, whatever you want to say about reviews, the most important thing is to write about your experience. And if you go to a really good specialty retail in any industry, those descriptions aren't just going to be cut and pasted from Amazon. They're not going to be cut and pasted from the manufacturer. They're actually going to be a person who actually uses it saying, this is how I use it. This is why I use it. This is where I use it. And that's customer experience. And so you can replicate that to some extent on the web.
And that's a very interesting discussion and very important distinction as well. Erin, what do you think so far overall from your perspective in terms of the differences between the traditional customer service versus the e-commerce customer service?
Well, I think that one of the things that comes to mind is just the benefits of Shopify when you're talking about customer service and a SaaS platform. And I know that we can get into a debate about that, but one of the advantages of a SaaS platform is that they have sort of built in some fail-safes. So they don't necessarily have amazing customer service, but the worst thing that you can do when you're running an e-commerce site is to have it be difficult at all for the customer to execute, on the purchase. And so some of these SaaS solutions have at least cleaned that up. And so I'd be curious to know, especially from the developer standpoint, Chris and Eric, what are some of the stumbling blocks to good customer experience that you find commonly in e-commerce sites? And what are some of the things you can do to prevent those?
I think that you're right that developers, we're always trying to identify where customers are facing a challenge and seeing if we can build something into the solution so that that goes away for everyone in every next instance. Something that came to mind is, in the past, we had a forgot password feature as an example, okay? So customers were coming in, maybe they didn't do business regularly with the business, so they had forgotten their password. Or maybe they received a coupon and now they wanted to execute on that coupon, but in order to do it, they had to go place the order online. And they had forgotten their password because they hadn't been there in a while. Well, we always had a forgot password feature, and it's available for customers to go ahead and do that. But some customers don't understand that that forgot password exists. So what they would do is call the business and say, I want to place my order online so I can utilize this promotional code, right? And what we didn't have built into the solution was the ability for that admin, that customer service representative, just to send them a new password, right? To enable the forgot password feature for them, rather than try to educate them over the phone and say, well, go here, then enter your email, and then go in your email. But rather say, we do have a forgot password feature, but I can reset it for you right here and now, right? So what they would do, go in the admin, they would ask them for their email, reset the password, say, did you get an email from us? Yes, I did. All right, well, there you go. Now, can I answer anything else for you here? So it's a live example of listening, learning, and then putting that, building features based on that feedback. And there's so many examples. And I think that as developers, we're always trying to be proactive with little things as those types of examples come up. So I hope that answered your question as far as a real life example.
Well, it's a great example of merging the two, the customer experience and the customer service, and using the digital platform as a way to make it a better experience instead of two that are sort of competing with each other. So
Sure.
That was a good example.
Erin, from your conversation, I think you did bring up very important point there related to these SaaS products. So a couple of things that you mentioned about these add-ons, and what they do is they actually provide some of the well-tested frameworks of the customer service, the way you should be serving the customers. So for example, let's say if you're looking at some of the newer e-commerce owners and they might not have as much experience overall in how your customers should be served. So these add-ons or the platforms are going to be providing the frameworks or the best practices from the industry that you don't have to figure out this by yourself, that, okay, let me try it out, how it works, and then I'm going to change that. So you don't have to do this. This is all built in the control framework in some of those add-ons. So thank you so much for bringing that point. Now, I am actually going to move to the next question, and that is going to be the unique challenges that we face when we try to enable the customer service strategies in the e-commerce world. So Damon, I'm actually going to come back to you if you don't mind. And that is going to be, what are some of the unique challenges that you are seeing in the marketplace? Is it really the mindset? Can you describe some of the unique challenges that you have seen in your experience in driving the customer service, the strategies for e-commerce owners?
Yeah, the one thing is that you're going to see in the e-commerce, in B2B and B2C really, is the wide variety of customer knowledge of your product, right? I mean, that's the real thing that drives it. You can have a complete novice, and you have someone that Steve was talking about that's a professional in their trade, and you have to be able to answer those questions across the board. And I think one of the things that I've seen that we've had to do in some of the businesses I've helped is you have to set up an almost elite customer service team that, it's the red phone kind of thing, because we've got somebody that's a power user of our product that needs that kind of help. And it's the same kind of help, right? You're helping them solve the problem, get them the right products and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about technical help. From a debugging a problem kind of customer service. I'm just talking about getting them to the right products. And that's what I think in e-commerce you see so much more than the traditional world. So that's the first one that comes to mind for me.
Okay, some very interesting points. What are some of the things that you guys have seen to measure the customer service? Chris, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is where I'll preach about data, because I do think there's so much information and data available for you. First, you have to make sure that people are coming to your site. So is there traffic to your site? So has there been adoption? A big part of customer service, and this is a transition, particularly in the B2B world, right? Customers have been doing business with you in one way for a long time. Now you're hoping and asking that they're going to do business with you in a new way. Part of that is launching it in a way that they even know it's an opportunity for them, because they might go down those traditional channels. So you want to make sure that there's a high level adoption, that they're actually coming, that they're aware that your site exists to help them with all these self-service things and others. That's the way you're going to transform. Once they get there, other indicators are you converting, right? Is your traffic converting? So another indicator of whether you're providing a good customer service through your store is whether there's actually conversions taking place online. If they're not converting, where are they getting stuck? What pages are they leaving you from? Where do they drop? So is there something you can learn about that scenario that you can go solve and be proactive about? So, there's a lot of information in analytics that will tell you what people are searching for and where they get stuck, and if they actually put that into their cart and if they, in effect, convert. So those are some of the indicators I would be looking for.
What about surveys, Chris?
Surveys
service, about customer service. Have you used those or seen those used? I certainly received them.
Yeah, I've seen them on websites as well. Typically, it happens after you process your order. We haven't had a lot of customers enable surveys on our side, so I haven't seen a lot of data in that. But I will say that most of your live chat, I know we've talked about live chat here, most of your live chat tools have a lot of information about what questions were asked. All of that information is stored. How long were you on that live chat? Who was the customer service representative that solved the problem? So you can start to understand your best people in live chats, and maybe they become the train the trainer type scenario. So there is some valuable information in the whole chat side of things.
Well, this is something, and I come back again, and what you were saying, Chris, is awesome about the conversion on the website. I come back again to the basic fundamentals of customer service. If you're getting 1,000 phone calls a day, how many drop phone calls did you get? If you got 5,000 emails today, did you get them all answered? And how quickly were they answered? Because if we start at the basics of customer service and understand that people want to get their questions answered as quickly as possible, you start there, you're going to, even if it's not the greatest answer, I think but you got to give them a good answer, right? Don't get me wrong. But those fundamentals are really where you start to measure your customer service performance. Because if you got 100 missed calls a day out of 200, your customers are mad as hell. That's just the way it is, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. So that's what we always we preach: get the simple fundamentals, make sure you're doing those, and then work beyond it.
Okay, so some very interesting insight, and I want to touch on one thing based on this conversation. So obviously, if you are converting them well, then the assumption is going to be that customers are finding whatever they need, and if you are, let's say, answering the calls, everything is good. But I'm actually coming back to your points, Aaron. You mentioned about the survey, and typically NPS is going to be the indicator for the happiness of the customer. Just because they are converting it does not mean that they are happy with you. Okay, so there is slightly bigger implication of the NPS indicator. So in the e-com world, do we have something comparable? And I think, Steve, you were touching on similar story there, and I don't know if there is a KPI that companies have figured out how to measure that, but I think there's a little bit of happiness, I would say, that we need to measure overall from the customer service perspective.
Yeah, I love the way this conversation is going right now, because Chris and Damon and Aaron, sorry you haven't gotten in on this in a bit, Eric, we'll need to get your opinion here. The data really is important. And I want to sort of tie together Aaron's question about surveys with also Chris's conversation topic about customer service reps and how to measure them. One of the answers, Aaron, for surveys is that most surveys are bad. The questions that are asked are wrong. If they provide answers, they're not very good. If they're open-ended, the answers don't, get answered the way you want. And the NPS score that was brought up by Garhav is actually the industry's answer to that problem. And the nice thing about it is it's simply a one-word question. How likely are you to recommend this company or this product to somebody else? Scale of 1 to 10. And a high score is good. In fact, a medium score, NPS score, is actually pretty decent. If you get like 6, 7, 8, is considered good. Lower than that, like not so much. And speaking to Chris's concept about measuring the quality of your actual service personnel, you can tie an NPS rating to the people who have actually touched that person. And you can tie the NPS rating to people who never touched anybody at all. So if you have an NPS score of people who've never talked to a human and it's 9, and your average rating for people who've talked to humans is 7, then you probably should figure out what's going on. What am I doing right on my website that my people aren't doing? Because it should be the other way around.
Okay, amazing insights, guys. So I don't know if anybody else has any other comment related to just the measurement of the customer service. That was an important topic that we wanted to cover as part of this conversation. Okay, go ahead, Eric, please.
Just a couple quick thoughts. One of my customers' goals when they redid their website hugely from an ancient creaky thing was to reduce the number of phone calls into the office staff that would assist with orders. That was like a big deal because they were getting so many calls, they were going to have to hire somebody else, which is an expense. So they were going to take that money that they were going to use to hire somebody and put it into the website, which I like to hear. After not long at all, customers their sales reps got used to the site and they went way down. So their goal was achieved. So that was one feature. The other thing that comes to mind is these chat systems and the help systems. To Chris's point, they do have all kinds of metrics you can use to figure out which one of the support officer support people are helpful and how long it took to get an answer. And the third thing really quick is that you can use other metrics like abandoned carts. And when you do a follow-up email of abandoned carts, how many of those convert? How many did those turn into orders? I mean, that's just a really basic metric, but still I think a lot of site owners don't even use that yet. So there's tools there that people aren't using.
Now, Sam, when I put on my consulting hat for clients, I like to think of a single metric. I'm a big believer in the one metric to rule them all. And in this particular instance, I think one of the best metrics is customer lifetime value.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean their lifetime. You usually pick a time frame, 3 or 5 years. If your average order amount is say $80, but your lifetime value, say 5 years, which is a reasonable amount most people pick, is say $900, then you know that people are coming back, 12 times. So, and it's also a metric that you can use to drive the entire company. Our goal is to increase the average order value and also increase lifetime customer value. If you do those two things, that if those things happen, that tells you you're succeeding not only in the front end experience, but in pricing and customer service because people are coming back. So that's your KPI.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Steve. If the customers are there for a very long time with you and they are ordering a lot, obviously that means a lot, to be honest. They must be happy. So yes, the lifetime value is definitely going to be a very important metric. So one of the things that we did not cover is going to be really what NPS stands for. I want to make sure that we are covering that because a lot of people might not be familiar with that. It's called Net Promoter Score. It's a very standard metric in the customer service profession, I guess. Now, we are going to do a very quick round overall. If you have any sort of trends or technologies that you have seen related to customer service that you might be able to mention during this episode so that our owners can take advantage of that. We have very short time, so we are going to keep it to just 1 or 2 sentences each of you. I'm going to do the quick round. So I am actually going to start with Damon. Have you seen any specific trends or technologies related to customer service that our listeners can take advantage of?
Well, I tell you, the things like they're doing at Gen Alpha, I mean, from a customer service standpoint, if you can get your customer service easy access to data to answer the questions faster, that whatever you can do to do that, it's a speed game. It's get them to their answers as fast as you can. And I don't have a specific technology other than I've seen their product and it's awesome. But anything that you can do to answer the questions faster by knowing more about your products.
And by the way, just to add to that, they are not only showing the product, it's really the 3D view of the entire machine, which is phenomenal in my experience, because that actually speaks for the volume that, you can see it, which is a major differentiator. So I do Yeah, like that. Chris, what are the trends? I mean, see, you cannot speak about Gen Alpha. You have to speak about something else.
I can say thank you. Thank you for that, guys. I would say that the biggest trend that we are seeing is live chat. And specifically because we work with global companies, they do business globally, and they want to be able to provide that 24/7 service and everywhere in which they're doing business. And the key to being successful with live chat in multiple countries is to make sure that you can speak the language to the people in the country in which you're doing business. And that is challenging for customers, but if you can get there, you're elevating your customer service level above and beyond what others are doing. So it's a huge differentiator when you can pull it off.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the older bots were fairly dumb, okay? But the newer bots are kind of smart, to be honest. I like them a lot at times, depending upon how deep the question is. If the question is going to be very deep, sometimes they are going to be confused. But some bots are super sharp. Okay, Eric, I'm actually going to move to you. Any trends or technologies that you have seen?
Yeah, assisted shopping or guided purchase or whatever term you want for using my sale board sort of example, helping somebody through the process and also pairing that with a chat system. So if somebody's using that and they still get stuck, they can still ring up somebody and say, hey, I've got this thing in process. The customer assistance person can look at it and go, oh, yeah, I see. What's your question? And they help them out right there.
Yeah, I agree with those trends. And especially if you can really retain the history of where the person was stuck, I think that's a huge time saver and great for the customer experience. Thank you so much for that. Steve, I'm actually going to move to you. What are some of the trends and technologies that you have seen related to customer service?
I'm definitely going to agree with the live chat for the customer experience on the front end. And I'm going to say that I think the next gen of live chat that's connected to customer relations software like HubSpot, where everything about that customer is right there. So whether somebody in the United States picks it up at 6 a.m. or someone in India picks it up at midnight, our time, all that person's information is there everywhere they've been on the website, everything they said on the phone to somebody. Getting that stuff centralized for a customer or for a customer service rep is actually doing a big service for the customer, because the customer service rep doesn't have to say, what's going on, what's wrong.
That is something nobody likes. So yeah, so the context that you have, the more history you can retain about the customer, the better. So thank you so much, Steve, for that. So we are going to do the quick closing advice. What is the closing advice, Damon, from your side?
Measure your customer service. Measure your customer service performance.
Love it. Chris, 3 to 5 words, closing advice.
Analyze the data and act on those insights.
Love it. Analyze the data, act on those insights, provide the customer service. Eric.
I would say keep your customer experience top of mind.
Yes, that's very good. Steve, 3 to 5 words.
Go to Stanford's website and learn about human-centered design and implement it.
Love it. Erin, closing advice.
I like what Chris was saying about making sure your customer service department really understands your e-commerce platform so that they're working together instead of sort of siloed. That's good, guys.
Could not agree more. The more you train, the more you coach, the better it is going to be. And guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. See you all next week.
Goodbye. Bye. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Eric Landman and Erin Courtney, head over to earthlinginteractive.com. It's EARTHLINGINTERACTIVE.com. If you want to learn more about Damon Pistelka, head over to exityourway.us. It's EXITYOURWAY.us. If you want to learn more about Dave Meyer, head over to buzzyweb.com. It's BIZZYWEB.com. If you want to learn more about Steve Rice, head over to .comjungle.com. It's DOTCOMJUNGLE.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Howard Chiersky, who discusses the process of customer empathy, the importance of user experience research, and the approach of design thinking to improve the outcome of digital initiatives. Also, the interview with Kirk Thompson from Chief Outsiders, who discusses how team alignment may be necessary to align with your customer experience strategy. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.